Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Leadership Speak series at L Forum. Today, I have the privilege and happiness to introduce a schoolmate and colleague for over 2 decades to our show today. Um, I'm very happy to invite Sriram Padmanabhan to our show. Hi, Sriram.
Hi, Ringo. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure, Sriram. And I'm sure our audiences would like to know a little bit about your background. So give us how you got here and your journey so far.
Sure. Very quickly, I have more than 20 years of experience at a firm. So, one thing that you didn't say is that in addition to being from the same school, we also shared some interesting times at, a premium institution, an organization that we worked together in the late 90s.
Absolutely. Many sleepless nights spent together in that campus. So,
Yeah, so great times, and I spent more than 15 to 20 years in software services organization, but before that, of course, I had my BTech from IIT Madras, and I had done a postgraduate diploma in management from IIM Ahmedabad, and I spent about 18 to 20 years it at a software services organization around the world, taking up different kinds of positions of management and leadership, and ended up here in New York by the year 2014, running a fairly significant set of relationships and accounts for the organization. I left from there to join a smaller organization as the head of their banking and capital markets division. And I spent a couple of years there understanding a lot more about leadership. And this is the first time that I was actually expected to take my own decisions in terms of budgeting, hiring, firing, deciding on which solutions to take to market and how I take them to market, and so forth. Exciting and really great sort of time to learn. And it is out of those experiences, both the one at the large organization as well as the one as a leader in a smaller organization, that I got my ideas for actually entrepreneurship. And the ideas were around leadership itself, which is very interesting because that's also the theme that L Forum talks about. So our idea was how we can sort of make leadership development or decision making something that can be taught and learned easy. So that was something that I found didn't come very easily to me through the various experiences that I had around the world. And I thought maybe because of all my experiences, I could do a little better in actually building a platform for using the latest technology and the latest in terms of industrial organizational psychology trends. We sort of built an AI-based platform which is used today in a couple of great organizations to train people on leadership decision making. So that's what I do, and that's the background to flashing forward to 2021.
excellent. That was really quick, and you kind of traversed almost 3 decades in less than 2 minutes. That was great. So I think to the audiences, so Sriram and I have worked together we've known him more easily as P3, so I think rather keep calling him P3. It's easier to do that. So I think P3, you've had I think amazing experiences seeing a firm which is almost very entrepreneurial and less than a few hundred people in the firm to see it grow into a multi-billion-dollar organization. You had the privilege and joy of seeing the growth and learning from that growth. And you've also seen smaller firms to try and take it to the next level of size and growth. And now you're an entrepreneurial organization, so you're bootstrapped and you are building your own firm. So you have, I guess, different views on the leadership experiences that you've had. I'm very keen to hear your journey as a leader from there on to where you are now.
So it's very interesting, right? I mean, I've been my leadership journey at various levels of leadership. In first place, you know, I wouldn't call it leadership something that happens only in the corner office in some higher stratified sort of stratospheric levels. I think there's leadership at pretty much every level of management within any organization. And, so in that sense, I think I've been dabbling at leadership and learning about leaders ever since I would say the late 90s, where I've been in charge of teams and tasks and projects. And across the 10 or 15 years after that, when I was still at this large organization, like you rightly said, it grew from a few hundred people to a few 100,000 people in that time frame, as we saw the software services industry really explode in India. You and I, we were part of this explosion. We saw it happen around us, and it was really tremendous times. And we were there was a wave of history, and we were sort of floating along on that wave. And along the journey, there were tremendous amounts of leadership lessons, both role models and positive lessons, as well as not so positive lessons. The one that I want to pick up is, so after having a whole lot of these observational lessons in terms of how you manage situations, how you manage crises and opportunities, and so on, I left this organization to join the smaller organization, and I thought it's in the same industry, so it should be a slam dunk to be able to apply everything I've learned in this large organization and apply it here. And I was part of the leadership organization, the leadership structure of the first organization. So I had gone through a lot of leadership training and development as well. So it was as if I had been in training for this leadership role in the second organization. And so I said, I'm just going to be able to crack this thing. But very soon it was apparent to me that that was not the case. I took up the head of banking and capital markets group in the smaller organization. The size of the portfolio was about $50 million, and in the first year of working in that organization, I spectacularly grew it from $50 million to $48 million. And along the way, I learned that the couple of things. Number one is that context matters in leadership. Context. It's not about theory. It's not about what you learn in B school, or even if you take certain things that you do if you're working for an IBM or a Google, and then you do the same things at a much smaller organization. Things that can get you fired in the larger organization can get you promoted in the smaller one, and vice versa. Things that work because the kind of clients, the kind of services you provide, the kind of solutions, the kind of employee power that you have, all of that differs. And so things that work in context A may not work in context B in the same way. So there is a context leadership. Whatever you learned in context one may not work in context two. So that is number one learning. The other learning that was very critical, I felt, was that people learn to take decisions by taking decisions. Okay, so every leader that
Very well said. Very well said.
So it's experiential, right? I mean, you can't literally learn how to take decisions by reading a book any more than you can learn swimming by reading a book, right? And which is why leadership is so tricky, because until you there's a sort of a cyclicality to it, right? Until you learn leadership, sometimes you can't be a leader, but until you have learned how to take those decisions, you will never learn how, until you take those decisions, you never learn how to take those decisions. So that is the tricky part of leadership. And I felt that, so in the second year as the head of the business unit, I managed to figure out, after making several missteps in the first year, and taking decisions and then observing what worked and what didn't work, in the second year we were able to get good growth and go back from 48 million to about 60 million, because I had now figured out how things work. But out of that entire experience came this insight to me that leadership is experiential. It is experiences that make the leader. So bad outcomes lead to experience, and experience leads to good outcomes. If you see what I mean. So
Yep,
it's
makes sense to me. I believe that. I believe that bad outcomes is really the bedrock for smarter solutions.
correct, correct. So that those are the two or three lessons that I take to bed every day, really. Uh,
Excellent, excellent. So, you worked in a firm which both. I mean, I'm going to take the risk of mentioning one was Infosys and the other one's NIIT. So you worked there, of course, still very established brands. They've been around for a while in their own sizes, of course. But I'm sure they were, and you probably pointed out some of the challenges you just now while you're sharing your experience as a leader. Uh, what was your, learning as an entrepreneurial leader? Was there any entrepreneurial learning in these firms, or was it something that you kind of were airdropped into your latest engagement as the CEO of Cymorg?
No, I mean, definitely working for a small company is you have to be, if you're a leader at a small company, you have to be entrepreneurial. Even at Infosys, which was not a small company by any stretch of imagination, by the time I was running, mid-level management responsibilities as I was, there's enough scope because I was in the sales and on the client-facing side of things. And so you can't afford not to be entrepreneurial. If you define entrepreneurial as being proactive, right, and charting out your own course, and having a purpose in mind, but being able to chart your own course proactively to in terms of how you hit that set of that purpose, or those targets and goals, then definitely it was heavily entrepreneurial. Obviously, the entrepreneurial element of those of my responsibilities, both at Infosys and IT, prepared me to some extent for my job, my current role as CEO of a startup. And but there's something new that I learn every day, or new challenge that you face every day as a true entrepreneur, which you didn't. At the end of the day, when you're working for a large company, the role may be entrepreneurial, but there is still, there is a safety net around you. There are people, you can't deal with a situation, you need advice. There are people, and those people have people, and so that there is a safety net there. And it's great if you can be entrepreneurial. If you need help, you can draw upon the organization. As an entrepreneur, pure play entrepreneur, and that too of a small startup, a really small bootstrap startup. You are your own safety net, to be honest. I mean, so there is nobody to fall back on, and that is the first and foremost truth of a startup entrepreneur. You have maybe a small set of friends, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm very privileged to be able to call you one of them.
My
But
honor too.
other than that small set of friends, there's really not a whole lot of safety net that you can call upon.
So one is a lack of safety net as an entrepreneur. What other experiences have you had as an entrepreneur that you can share with the group here?
I mean, as you know, I mean, every day of entrepreneurship has its own challenges, and there's clearly a book somewhere in there, which hopefully we'll get to write and read and enjoy and so on. But in terms of the learnings of it, I think it's the challenges are so different, right? Every challenge can be very different. It can be, you have funding challenges, you have the biggest challenges are of convincing people. I would say, if I had to choose one sort of overarching challenge, you are a person with an entrepreneurial idea, and you've started something, you have the germ of an idea, or you even have more than the germ. Maybe you have a product, or a vision, and actually a design and so on. Your biggest challenge is in convincing people. Okay. And that, different, maybe different entrepreneurs have different biggest challenges. In my case, it was that of convincing people. What do I mean, right? I think I had to convince people to part with some of their money and trust my platform as a client. I had to convince people to part with give up their jobs, come join me as co-founders and employees. They also needed to be convinced, as in they had to trust me. People had to trust me with their funds. When they said, you know what, I trust you with my money. I'm going to invest my money because I think you will give me better returns than a bank will or than the stock market will. They're all people who need to be convinced in order to have trust in one. And when you start off, you have all of this ideas and inspiration and all that, but unless and until you get this ecosystem of employees, partners, investors, clients, and every one of them is a convincing job, and everyone needs to be given a reason to trust you with their both their funds, their time, their expertise, and all of that. That is your problem. And if you can't convince them, you don't have a startup. And I think the last part, the biggest challenge, if you may, is when you trust yourself. As an entrepreneur, you sit back and you think and you say, okay, I must be onto something really big. And unless you believe that yourself, if you doubt that, then I think you really don't have a leg to stand on. However, well, you convince your investors and your clients, unless you believe in yourself that what you're doing is worthwhile, and you have the ability to make it work, you're not going to be a success, or you're not going to enjoy your entrepreneurial journey. So I think the
Excellent.
greatest lesson is, how do you get to trust yourself
Hmm.
as an entrepreneur?
Trusting yourself. That's great. I mean, that's self belief or trust, or that's I guess paramount. And I've heard that from a lot of entrepreneurs, that you need to be able to trust yourself and trust your team, trust the process, as they say.
Correct. But
So
I want to make a small sort of a fine distinction here, if I may take another minute on that.
sure.
Self belief and self trusting yourself is at the level of the purpose, and the ultimate goal, that this is why I am in entrepreneurship, and this is a worthwhile goal for me to have, and I will reach that goal. That's the belief. Now, it is, I think, while that is very, very important, in fact, it is like the most important thing, it is also important in a slightly paradoxical way to have oodles of self doubt as well, in terms of the micro steps you take to get there. So you have a strategy, you have, maybe you go after a certain set of clients, or you build out your software with thinking that this is the way I'm going to get, this is my product market fit. This is how I'm going to make my money. And this is the best way to go to market. These are all tactical decisions you take with the overall purpose in mind, right? But what I mean is, an entrepreneur, I think, needs to have a lot of self doubt in these micro steps, because he should have the openness of mind that I tried this for 3 months, it's not working. Maybe I should pivot. Maybe I should try something else. If you have too much self belief, not only in the overall goal, but also in the way to get to that overall goal, then that over confidence might sort of shut your mind from seeing where you might possibly go wrong. That humility, that one can be wrong in choosing a set of clients, or in choosing a product. I think that humility shouldn't go away. I'm just making a fine distinction between having that humility, that I can be wrong, I may need to change the way I'm doing things in order to reach the final goal, while at the same time having a full, like, unshakable belief in that final goal itself. So the final goal doesn't change, but how I get there, I can be wrong, and I should be open to changing, um, you know,
Directions and stuff.
direction. That's what.
So from what you're basically saying is, you have to probably have a clarity of vision of where you want to be,
Mm.
and the path that you may have started off may be very different from the path you finally took to reach your goal.
Absolutely.
The vision doesn't get altered, but the paths may, you may pivot and use other modes and ways to get there. Did I get that right?
Pretty much. And I'm saying you have to be open to the idea that the path you have chosen. See, this is, I think, the tricky bit, because we're at one side, we are saying have complete unshakable belief in that end goal. But having had that thing, you sort of come up with, this is how I'm going to get there. But then here I'm saying, when you've charted your path, you have to be open to the possibility that the path that you've charted out could be wrong. It's not
Excellent.
leading anywhere. And so keep sort of that self-awareness of, am I doing something that is never likely to hit, allow me to hit those goals. um, and keep checking for feedback from other people, and
Excellent.
and that is so important.
Excellent. And at some level you did answer my next question, so I'm not going to bore you with the same question. Just going to be, what are the challenges as an entrepreneur? I think you kind of already elaborated that very well. So my next question to you will be, uh, do you see any differentiation between an entrepreneurial leader and other leadership styles? Do you see any basic differences?
So obviously, an entrepreneurial leader is far more, I would say, self-driven, but also it's very interesting, because every notion of leadership that we have, right, in mythological terms, when we speak about great leaders, Mahatma Gandhi or Mother Teresa or Nelson Mandela and all of that, we define leadership a lot by its external ramifications, right? How, and them making great speeches to people, to their followers, and them achieving great goals and so on and so forth, right? But actually, to me, what separates an entrepreneurial leader from other kinds of leaders, I think, is all the attributes I can think of are very inward looking, sort of internal attributes of those people. They're very self-aware, they're very self-motivated and self-driven, and they have a strong sense of purpose, which is not very innate to, the way they're thinking. It isn't something that they're doing differently from other people. It is something that, uh, they demonstrate, which are very internal characteristics. So self-awareness, I would say, is very important, and a sense of purpose and proactive, nature, which is that, I need to get from here to there. I don't need to wait for someone to tell me what to do. I will, it's between me and my goal, and I know, nothing else really matters. And that, I think, is the one thing that entrepreneurial leadership styles have. I think other leadership styles may sort of be influenced by other, what people are telling them, and what people, other people are setting for them as goals and targets and so on. But the motivation coming from inside is possibly a lot more from an entrepreneurial
I
point
think
of view.
very well said, Sri. I couldn't agree more. So, with your almost 2.5 decades of experience as a professional, as a corporate leader, as an entrepreneur now, what would your you know top 3 or 4 nuggets of advice be to young leaders, entrepreneurs, or even for me? What would you suggest based on your learnings? What would be your advice, suggestions?
As an entrepreneur, I mean, every entrepreneurial job is, I think it's is, like I keep saying, context is important. So it's not as if there are too many pieces of advice that are universal truths kind of thing, right? Other than, establish very early why you are doing this. What are you trying to get out of this, right? Is it money? It's okay if it is money. Is it power, fame, wealth, whatever it is that you are trying to get. Every entrepreneur has that, you know If you don't have that and you're only interested in being an entrepreneur for the name CEO in your title, then I think you should take a very close look at, is this really what you want out of life. But if you're an entrepreneur because um, you have a certain goal that you want to achieve, financial or non-financial, I think it's very important for you to know what it is, because there will be days when it is hard to get up. Okay, every entrepreneur has this thing, and on those days, the one thing that will help you, and they'll be hard to get up because um, entrepreneurship is like wearing, it's like wearing seeing the world in HD for the first time. Everything is accentuated, right? The people who help you get closer to your goals, your gratitude to them is a lot more. The people who don't help you, your frustration levels are more in an entrepreneurial job as opposed to in a random job. So there will be days when there are great joys, there will be days when there is a lot of frustration, and to an extent a lack of, you don't know where to go next. You're kind
Got
of
it.
at doldrums. On those days, I think the one thing that saves you is recalling of why you got into it in the first place. What is that goal that you need, that you're trying to get to? Why are you doing this? And that gives you strength to continue, and that gives you renewed sort of vigor to say, okay, so I am at sort of a bottom right now, but that doesn't mean that I don't have a sense of purpose. Just have to pick myself up, and I have to get from here to there, and then it sort of tunes the mind towards thinking about what I do need to do next, rather than sort of wallowing in the misery of the wrong transactions that have gone on. So I think that
Well
is the
said.
one thing I would leave to with people, that bad days will happen, and on those days, just remember what made you an entrepreneur, and picture yourself as achieving that goal. Visualize yourself as achieving that goal, and that will give you the excitement to sort of, or the tempo to actually pick yourself up off the floor and head towards it.
Excellent, P3. That's very motivating, and I think a lot of us need it. When you said there are days when you don't feel like getting up from bed, and I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs, at whatever stage they are in their journey, those days happen to all of us. So great. Thank you so much for your time, P3. It's always a joy and pleasure, and I don't want to run away with the clock. We can keep talking about this forever. But thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for your inputs. I'm sure I would love to have you on more of our conversations and interactions that we have on L Forum. Look forward to your active participation there, and I wish you and everyone at Cymorg all the very best and all success.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sigo.